Jeff, it's not all good news. We got some bad news last week. You wound up being in Huntsville doing a little press and a little media, seeing our man Carl down at WAFF and some of my pals over at WHNT. And
Had a grand old time in your backyard.
shout out to the Brooklyn Brawl. I mean, Jack Spade over at the Rocket. It was a fun visit, and we got to hook up at Longhorn and share a meal together. And you got to do man versus food. It was really impressive.
Cassie is regular.
He got his usual. By the way, boys and girls, here's what Jeff had. Just to recap, Jeff had a salad, and he also had a little bread. He had a steak. He had a baked potato. He had a sweet potato. He had some asparagus. He had some broccoli. Did I miss anything? I feel like there's one more side.
Oh, God, would you stop it?
It was really impressive. I was so happy to see you knock it out. But it was ironic because we both woke up to the news that morning that we had lost Toby Keith. And when I think about Toby Keith and you, I think about your very first TNA show here in Huntsville, of all places. That's really the first and only time Toby got involved in wrestling. He was doing this concert on the stage. You're a jerk and you interrupt it. And he inserted himself in the battle royal, gave you a big suplex. It all happened here in Huntsville. And on the day we learned of his passing, you were back in Huntsville promoting wrestling. Man, it was pretty ironic. But even around town, I don't know that you saw it that day, but I've seen them all over town since. There's a series of digital billboards that are paying tribute to Toby Keith right here in Huntsville, Alabama. Not in Oklahoma, but here in Huntsville. And I just thought, man, what a legacy that guy leaves. And you didn't just know his music or know him from a wrestling standpoint. You're his real life friend. I wanted to give you a few moments here to talk about your pal, Toby.
Oh, boy. We could have maybe saved this till the end. Yeah, I put on Instagram, no coincidences, only convergences. Just Conrad, talking about Toby gets so much emotions going with, because our relationship, but also just in a lot of ways, I looked up to him in so many ways in how he conducted his life, how he, his business acumen, his simplicity of things, and really his outlook. The comments that he made in his final days, a month or two out, he's like, "Hey man, I've come to grips. I'm not going to let cancer define me. I'm doing what I can do, and I'm going to live my life." The way I believe I'm getting the quote wrong. The way he was okay with passing, and he said, "Folks without faith don't have that," and that is what resonated over the last week with me. It's how eloquent he could just kind of put it into the most simplistic words. People without faith, they don't have that.
Right.
That to me is like, well, don't have what? Well, we don't have enough time on this podcast to really go through that. But man, all the fun times and the different stories, and there's a whole nother story, Conrad, that I won't tell on this podcast. That picture that y'all showed of me on the bus, and Karen, you see the red Solo cup in my hand, Conrad. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. But all the good times and the Huntsville story and everything that went into that story is deep. Him, that song coming out of the war, or starting the war, 9/11 happened in September. He wrote that song, and then 2002, as he's going out on tour, he writes this. He wrote it, and that was going to be his anthem, but he had no idea, and he says that how divisive and just everything that went with it. But then he got the invite and said, "No, I can't go be at the White House." And of all folks, now some folks could say, no, I can't make my White House gig. But if you know Toby, I mean, he loved his country. So patriotism, it's definitely no secret. It's the very top of it. But he made a commitment, to his buddy that I'm coming to perform. And he did. And then, going through the ups and downs of TNA and maybe that was, I don't know, 2012, 11 or 12, because he had kind of referenced, why don't we go buy that thing back? Is he really serious about that? And then as we got into that part of our relationship and me dealing with, I'll just say, his attorneys and his business folks, and then you really begin to understand the kind of businessman he is. And again, going back to integrity and the simplicity, and he's a $1 billion guy that started off of literally writing songs, comes to Nashville, and he tells his wife, they may not like my singing, but I know they're going to like my writing. And so his core to his heart is being a singer-songwriter, but then building an empire of racehorses and golf course. And just business after business after business. But he wanted to get into wrestling because he saw the opportunity. But then when essentially the Carters wanted to do it without me and bring Toby in, he's just like, no, Jeff's my guy. And so those kind of things define to me like, wow, this guy, he is different.
Yes.
He is, you ain't going to buy him off. You ain't going to do it. I mean, he that's why I said, I'll never have a friend like Toby.
Right.
Just there was no hidden agenda. So waking up to that text, that hurt just because, man, life is so fragile. I mean, my God. So fragile. He just did a show. He was getting offers coming in. Was it going to be a residency in Vegas? Was he going to go back on tour? Just all the things and how he lived his life. A true, we throw this term around, but man, an icon in the country music world. But as far as friendships, just incredible. Never met anybody like him. What a great friend. You know what? My emotions have gone up and down. I mean, when I think of all the fun times, like, I don't like to drop names on there without asking permission, but there's some folks in my past that, anyway, we've had a lot of times with Cody and with Toby, and he texted me and talked about, hey, remember that time that on the bus and they were passing around that moonshine? And I'm like, oh boy, yeah. We've got a mutual friend, Connie. I'll just say that he had a couple of sips on the moonshine. He had to get off the bus and he went down, and not far from the bus, but he just went down and sat down on this curb that couldn't have been comfortable. But let's just say he sat on that curb for a good 30 minutes. I just say that moonshine was a little stiff for him. So there's so many good times I had with Toby too, but the life lessons and the friend he was, that did get me emotional. But obviously, I'll wrap it here. I've had a blast with Toby Keith through the years.
We had a blast talking about him at Longhorn, and it was all positive, fun, happy. So I didn't expect that, and certainly didn't mean to throw you a curveball, but I'm glad that's what I like about doing a show with you, man. You're just you're honest, you're open. And I think that's what makes this podcast such a great listen. I hope if you guys are listening, you'll hit the subscribe button and you tell your friends about one of the more honest wrestling podcasts out there.